Let's dive right in. There's so much to unpack here, and I don't want to jinx a thing. Is this the return to form for Game of Thrones? Could it even be the best season yet? All jokes aside, this show completely caught me off guard, like finding out your best friend secretly got married in Vegas. If you're new to Movies and Series Reset, this is where we dive deep into the lore, connections, and hidden details you might have missed in A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Spoiler warning, we'll be covering details that extend beyond this first season, so be warned. Every like, comment, and subscription helps our channel grow, so if you're enjoying this, don't forget to follow and subscribe to Movies and Series Reset. Now, let's talk about Lionel Baratheon and that Maester staring down at Dunk like a pair of disappointed parents after a night out. You might think this is Maester Yormwell, the one Prince Baelor Targaryen wanted to examine Dunk after dealing with Prince Mikar. But since Baelor didn't survive, that order never came through. Hence, this Maester is from House Baratheon. And that moody jazz music kicking off the episode, that's entirely new for Game of Thrones, proving this series isn't afraid to carve its own path. The song during the end credits is Tennessee Ernie Ford's 1955 recording of 16 Tons, a haunting ballad about a coal miner and the crushing weight of systemic poverty, where the little man is treated like property. It perfectly captures Dunk's world, one where freedom is an illusion and the common man is trapped in an endless cycle of hardship. This scene between Lionel and Dunk, not in the books. Neither is Lionel's claim that the tournament was wonderful. For Dunk, it was anything but. But for Lionel, history will remember him as a valiant warrior who stood for honor in one of the most legendary tournaments in the Seven Kingdoms, or should I say 9. We'll get to that. Life at Storm's End, the heart of House Baratheon, is dull for Lionel. What he really wants is a friend like Dunk, someone to hunt, hawk, and make merry with. He even invites Dunk back to Storm's End and asks if he's ever visited Tarth, the island just east of Shipbreaker Bay. You might remember Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin confirmed she's a direct descendant of Duncan the Tall. While the exact lineage isn't spelled out, one popular theory suggests Dunk had an affair with one of Egg's sisters. So far, we know Dunk had 3 brothers, Daeron, Aerion, and Aemon, but he also had 2 older sisters, Daela and Rhea. The theory goes that one of these princesses was married off to House Tarth to hide a bastard child, explaining Brienne's towering height and why Dunk's shield ends up in the Tarth armory in a feast for crows. Lionel's Maester says Dunk's wound has mortified, meaning it's gone gangrenous. The Maesters suggest boiling hot wine to cleanse it, but Lionel isn't having it. He even drops the line, "The others take me," referencing the White Walkers who, at this point, are just boogeymen to the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms. I love how this scene is set against a hedge and a large elm tree, a fitting backdrop for a hedge knight whose sigil is emblazoned with one. And let's not overlook Lionel's stag crutch, a nod to his house. Lionel offers Dunk a place at Storm's End, promising to love him like a brother. But Dunk's response is what really matters. "All I do is bring pain and suffering to those around me." As we'll see throughout the episode, Dunk feels a tremendous amount of guilt for Prince Baelor's death. As he'll later tell Prince Mikar, he may not have been the one to swing the mace that killed him, but it was for Dunk that Baelor died. If Dunk truly believes he only brings pain and suffering to those around him, then this is the reason he initially declines Mikar's offer to take Aegon as his squire. "I think I'm done with princes," he says, but we'll get to why he changes his mind later. Lionel, meanwhile, has little respect for the sacrifice Baelor made. Any good dragon is a dead dragon. For Lionel, Baelor's involvement was one of cowardice. His 3 Kingsguard wouldn't dare attack him, let alone Steffon and his nephews. The only person who might possibly harm him is his brother Mikar. So the risk he went into the battle with was extremely low, at least compared to knights like Humphrey Harding, Beesbury, and Apple. In fact, Sir Humphrey Harding and Sir Humphrey Beesbury both lost their lives in this battle. It makes me think of Sir Robin Risley's remarks toward Baelor on how the gods will look down on a warrior whose opponents can't fight him. Lionel kind of answers this by stating the gods don't favor a fraud. So why do they favor Dunk? If you believe Dunk was never truly knighted by Sir Arlen, then he is a fraud. The book leaves it ambiguous as to whether Dunk was actually knighted. However, the show leans heavily into the never knighted side, including this scene mere hours before Sir Arlen's death, where Dunk questions his master on why he's never been knighted. It's still technically possible that Sir Arlen knighted him sometime after this scene and before his death. However, Dunk's hesitation to knight Raymond Fossaway in episode 4 and that weird cut to Sir Arlen looking at him like, "What do you want me to do?" paints a pretty clear picture in my mind. On the question of his knighthood, George R.R. Martin has stated, Dunk is a very special case. He's a knight who may not be a knight. The question of his knighthood is something that I will continue to explore, but as you've seen in the books, he certainly behaves more like a true knight than many of the true knights we meet. George is implying that even if Dunk wasn't knighted, what makes a true knight is not his sword, armor, or name, but his actions, and Dunk behaves more like a true knight than many in the land. In addition to wanting a friend at Storm's End, Lionel warns of war on the horizon. Remember, Westeros has enjoyed 13 years of relative peace since the end of the First Blackfyre Rebellion, the aftermath of which we briefly saw with younger Dunk. The war Lionel is referencing is most likely the Second Blackfyre Rebellion, which takes place 3 years after the events of the Ashford Tournament and serves as the backdrop for the third Dunk and Egg novella, The Mystery Knight. While Lionel doesn't appear in the second novella, it certainly seems the writers are setting him up for future appearances. He does meet Dunk later on in a different story, but we'll get to that in a bit. Prince Baelor is burned in the traditional Targaryen way, by fire, but there are no dragons to light it like we saw with King Viserys' wife and child in House of the Dragon. However, I'm more interested in who is and isn't in attendance. There's some controversy over who some of these people are, particularly this older man and woman. At this point, we haven't received confirmation whether this older man is King Daeron II along with his wife, Queen Miriah Martell. Keep in mind, rough estimates indicate a typical horse ride from King's Landing to Ashford could take up to 2 weeks. If it is the king, then why aren't Baelor's second son, Matarese, and wife, Jenna Dondarrion, at the funeral? They'd presumably be at home in King's Landing. Some might also say Miriah Martell was known for her black Dornish hair, but at her age, it would be natural for it to turn gray. I should also mention you can briefly see this older man in the episode's tag walking in the background. Surely the king wouldn't be subjected to walking and would have his own royal carriage. All the book says about King Daeron's presence is the following. Baelor had been the finest knight of his age, and some argued that he should have gone to face the dark clad in mail and plate, a sword in his hand. In the end, though, his royal father's wishes prevailed and Daeron II had a peaceable nature. That's it. It doesn't state whether these wishes were received in person or via Raven from King's Landing. From left to right, we have the Ashford Septa, who made a plea to the gods for justice before the trial last episode. Then there's Manfred Dondarrion. Jenna Dondarrion, one of Manfred's relatives, was married to Baelor, so it makes sense someone from the Dondarrion family would be in attendance. As for the 2 white-haired girls in the background, it's purely speculation, but it's possible they could be Mikar's 2 daughters, Daela and Rhys. The silver-white hair definitely seems like a deliberate choice by the creators. If they wanted them to be random nobles, why go out of the way to make their hair white? Next is Baelor's eldest son, Valar Targaryen, now first in line to the Iron Throne. Next to him is almost certainly his wife, Keira of Tyrosh. While her specific hair color isn't defined in the book, the Tyroshi are said to commonly dye their hair pink, blue, green, or scarlet. When Prince Aerion dies due to the Great Spring sickness that sweeps across Westeros over the next few months, Keira gets to marry his cousin Daeron the Drunk. Lucky girl. Of course, there's Aegon Egg Targaryen looking his best in his black Furisk beret and his father, Prince Mikar. Rounding out the attendees are 2 members of the Kingsguard, Sir Donal of Duskendale and Sir Roland Crakehall. Where is the third, you might ask? Sir Willem Wilda was carried from the tournament, unable to feel his body, implying he was paralyzed in the Trial of 7. Prince Aerion was also not in attendance, as he was recovering from his injuries sustained during the tournament. In the book, Dunk attends the funeral, but here the writers have him watch from the cliff below, only coming up after it's all over to see the Silent Sisters collecting the prince's ashes. He'll have a rather somber chat with Valar, who makes the sad observation that not many children bury their fathers. Why is it that the gods took a man who could have been the greatest king since Aegon the Conqueror, but spared this lowly hedge knight? Dunk ponders this too, and it's something he'll struggle with in his journey to come. As the attendees tear down their stalls and pavilions, we can see all the looks Dunk gets. This isn't the hero's recognition he thought he would get by becoming a knight. As Prince Mikar will later state, Dunk will forever be associated with the death of a great prince, one whose future was never realized. Our boy Raymond, this season's MVP, gives Dunk an extremely awkward hug. We're left to find that his cousin Stefan Fossaway, the man who betrayed Dunk at the last moment to join Prince Arian's side, has packed all his things and headed home, leaving Raymond with almost nothing. It's got to be pretty embarrassing losing to your younger cousin in the first trial of 7 in over 100 years. We finally get a shot of Raymond's green apple shield. Before the trial, he had it painted from red, saying he'd rather be an unripe green apple than a wormy red one. To top it off, he thinks he might have broken one of Stefan's ribs. And wouldn't you know it, Raymond snagged the prettiest lady of the night who was previously canoodling with Lord Manfred Dendarian. She's only been with Raymond for a few nights, and the fact that she says she's now with child means that it's probably not Raymond's but Manfred's. I feel like this should be on the cover of Westeros Inquirer or something. She and Raymond will go on to create a splinter contingent of House Fossaway, the Green Apple Fossaways, while the Red Apple Fossaways remain at Cider Hall. The Green Apples set up shop in New Barrel, which makes sense now that Raymond mentions he'll probably build a barreling business. Rowan Fossaway isn't in the book, but fans have really enjoyed her addition to the show, and it's nice to see Raymond happy. Dunk is called for a meeting with Prince Mikar. It's interesting that he's sitting in the same chair and in front of the same book his brother was just a few days earlier. Mikar states that Arian will be sent to the Free Cities, hoping it might change him for the better. The book states he's sent to Lyse, returning some 10 years later during the Third Blackfyre Rebellion in 219 AC. And you're probably like, whoa, how many Blackfyre rebellions are there? There are 5 if you count the War of the Ninepenny Kings, but that's a topic for a different video. Mikar will have to live with people whispering whether he killed his brother on purpose. I genuinely believe he didn't intend to do so. He never wanted Arian to demand a trial of 7, never wanted his brother to join the battle. And even if he was making some grand play for the throne, there are 6 other people in front of him. Dunk laments that he had to fight to save his hand and foot, but his sorrow is so deep he wonders if he could have spared one. Will there be a day the realm will need his foot more than a prince's life? We'll never know the answer to this. However, it is unquestionable the impact Dunk will have on all of Westeros as the show continues to delve further into his story. As Joffrey says in Game of Thrones, Sir Duncan the Tall, 4 pages for Sir Duncan, he must have been quite a man. So they say, Mikar makes an unusual offer to Dunk. Even though this man is partly responsible for his brother's death, Mikar offers him arguably the greatest position a lowly knight could have, short of joining the Kingsguard. In exchange for allowing Egg to squire for him and swearing his sword to Prince Mikar, Dunk would be given a place at the Targaryen summer home of Summerhall. There he would train Egg while simultaneously being taught by the best master satarms in the 7 kingdoms. Although Dunk was taught by Sir Arlen, there's still a lot for him to learn, but remember what Dunk said to Lionel. All I do is bring pain and suffering to those around me. By rejecting Mikar's offer, he truly believes he's protecting Egg. He is embodying the ideals of a true knight by rejecting coin and prestige to protect the innocent. But here's the interesting thing. Prince Mikar believes the opposite. He believes Egg being with Dunk is the very protection he needs. You see, Egg's life without Dunk would be bleak. One of Egg's brothers has made his life a living hell by threatening to cut off Egg's manhood. His other brother is a drunk, and the third is halfway across the continent studying to become a Maester. Mikar himself has already failed his first 3 sons. In fact, in his last line to Dunk, he refers to Egg as his last son. This has a heart-wrenching double meaning. Not only is Egg Mikar's literal last son, as in youngest, but he's figuratively the last one who can still be molded into something other than a failure. Dunk has to break Egg's heart by telling him he can't take him on. It's also interesting that Egg lies to Dunk about spying on his conversation. Lying has been a common thread for Egg. It was a lie that started this season, and it'll be a lie that ends it. For just like Egg hid the real reason he wanted a squire for Dunk, Dunk hides from Egg the real reason he can't take him on as a squire. Then there's the final lie. In the episode's tag, we'll see Prince Mikar furious that Egg has run off after Egg explicitly told Dunk his father allowed him to come. The book never tells us what Prince Mikar's actual decision is, just that he finally turned and walked away, never speaking a word after his final talk with Dunk. So, it'll be interesting how the show navigates this going into Season 2. Dunk's flashback with Sir Arlen tells the tale of the penny tree origin. When men of House Penrose would go off to war, they'd pin a penny to the town's tree, only to retrieve it once they came back. The thing was, many of these soldiers never came back, leaving the tree filled with hundreds of pennies. So it's a fitting homage to his former master when Dunk leaves a penny on the tree he slept under at Ashford Meadow. It also suggests he may one day return. Also, shout out to the Sir Arlen death fakeout, which still keeps intact the ambiguity of Dunk's knighthood, but we can assume he dies shortly after this scene. Now that coffin, wild. Who had the idea to keep it inside? We can hear in the background revelers paying tribute to Sir Humphrey Harding and Sir Humphrey Beesbury, both of whom passed away in the tournament. You can even see Sir Donal of Duskendale over here, who's believed to have been Beesbury's killer. Raymond isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed when he thinks it's literal magic that's causing the bees to hover around the coffin. There's this quick 3-second shot of two kids playing, with one saying, "Do you yield, dragon whore?" These look like two noble kids, one from House Harding and one from Beesbury, reenacting Dunk's victory over Prince Arion. It just goes to show how quickly stories will spread around the kingdom about this monumental event, so much so that kids will reenact it. Dunk can't believe that Prince Daron has the audacity to show himself around here. It was partly Daron's fault Baelor and the others are dead, as Daron created the lie that Dunk kidnapped Egg in the first place. But Daron's come here on a mission. He wants Dunk to reconsider taking Egg on as his squire. He, like Mikar, believes if Egg stays with him, it won't be any good. No doubt we'll make a man of him too, he says. Then Daron questions whether madness is inherited or the result of our upbringing. He states that Arion was once a good child, implying that it's our upbringing that shapes us into who we are. I think this is ultimately what spurs Dunk to agree to take on Egg under his own conditions. He also knows his own life was shaped by Sir Arlen. Maybe he can shape the life of a young prince. This ends up being true, as Egg will go on to become King Aegon V, known as a kind and approachable man beloved by the Smallfolk. By traveling the kingdoms and living like a member of the Smallfolk, Egg would have the unique perspective of knowing what it was like to live the life of a peasant. This will undoubtedly shape how he'll rule the 7 kingdoms, or should I say 9. At the end of the episode, Egg corrects Dunk that there are actually 9 kingdoms. In reality, both 7 and 9 are technically correct, but for different reasons. 7 comes from the formal name of the realm established by Aegon the Conqueror during his conquest. While that was over 200 years ago, a lot has changed. 9 kingdoms is more in line with Westeros today, and it's more of a geographical distinction than a political one. These include the North, the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Riverlands, the Westerlands, the Reach, the Stormlands, Dorne, and the Crownlands. So, by correcting Dunk here, Egg is basically showing off how he's a history buff, and using the technical reality of how the Targaryens actually governed the continent at the time. Perhaps the most audacious scene not found in the book is the addition of Egg going to kill his brother. Moments earlier, he looks at himself in the mirror, seeing the stubble of his white hair coming in, a reminder of everything he hates. Remember that part of the reason he shaved off his hair was that he didn't want to be associated with his brother Arion. "I cut it off, brother. I didn't want to look like you." Knowing that his dream of leaving his family to squire for Dunk has been dashed and he'll go back to living with his sadistic brother, who he likely doesn't know will be sent off to the Free Cities just yet, this seems like the only option for him. Remember, throughout the season, Egg called for the death of his brother. Kill him, I wish Duncan had killed him." I guess he forgot the words of his uncle, and the Septons say we must love our brothers. Kind of ironic coming from a guy who will be killed by his brother. Luckily, Mikar is there, and without saying any words, he puts his hands on his son's shoulders and we hear the knife drop. Mikar doesn't scold his son, he empathizes with him. Egg's decision here is not just a failure on Egg's part, but Mikar's as a father. Dunk requests an audience to see the prince. But before that, we get one last cameo from Gwyneth Ashford, the young lady whose name day was the very purpose for this tournament in the first place. She tells him she does not blame him for ruining her name day and that he was right for what he did. Certainly a bit of a change from when she said, "You're big and stupid," a few days earlier. In his final meeting with the prince, Dunk recalls Baelor's need for good men by taking on Egg as his squire. Perhaps this would be his way of giving Baelor what he wanted, a good man who will eventually become king. So, Dunk will take him on, but only on the condition he learns what it's like to live the life of a hedge knight. Egg will learn, as Dunk learned on the road, sleeping in inns and stables, working for landed knights and lesser lords. At first, Mikar is against this. Stables and hard salt beef are no life for a prince, but as Dunk retorts, the life of a prince certainly didn't work out for Daron and Arian. Although not explicitly said, it seems to me that Mikar isn't willing to give up his last son. Thus, Dunk ventures to continue his journey on his own. That is, until Raymond comes offering a gift. His old horse, Sweetfoot, who he sold for new armor. Now, Dunk did promise to buy Sweetfoot back if he won the tournament, but Dunk didn't win the tournament. He simply won the right to keep his hand and foot by winning the Trial of 7. There isn't any cash prize for that, so Dunk essentially comes out of the tournament poorer than when he went in. Raymond, the absolute gem of a man, buys Sweetfoot back for him. But ultimately, Dunk gives Sweetfoot to Raymond, stating life on an orchard will be better for her. Raymond even feeds her a green apple. He also comes bearing news that Lionel wants Dunk as his stag, essentially in his service at Storm's End. Dunk will reject this, and it made me think of what Lionel says should Dunk not join him: "I'll hate you like a brother." In the world of ice and fire, we learn that Duncan the Tall will eventually face Lionel in a trial by combat. This happens when Egg, now King Aegon V, has his son Prince Duncan Targaryen break his betrothal to Lionel's daughter to marry Jenny of Oldstones. Dunk ends up winning the duel, and Lionel yields, eventually leading to a resolution where Egg agrees to marry his daughter Rhaelle to Lionel's heir Ormond Baratheon, the grandfather of Robert Baratheon. So we can see here how Dunk and Egg's story is weaving the history of all of Westeros leading up to Game of Thrones itself. Egg joins Dunk, stating his father says he can serve him. "That was a lie," Dunk says. And immediately, Dunk gets to work correcting him, saying, "Serve you, sir," and issuing orders. If Egg is going to squire for Dunk, he will not be treated like a prince. He's going to live the life of a real hedge knight and his squire. But where should they go off to next? Egg suggests the Red Mountains leading to Dorne, and Dorne is where Tanselle was last headed. The Red Mountains were actually mentioned in Episode 1. It was where Sir Arlen served Manfred Dondarrion's father in his hunt for the Vulture King. And as we end, we get this beautiful symbolic shot of Sir Arlen veering off. His journey is over. Meanwhile, Dunk and Egg travel off together into the sunset. You might even see Dunk giving one final glance to his former master. Season 2 has already started filming, and with these shorter episodes, HBO plans to release a new season every year. Season 2 is set to cover the second novella, The Sworn Sword, which puts Dunk and Egg in the middle of two rival houses. Now, after we get this new title, A Knight of the Nine Kingdoms, there's this fun tag of the Targaryens heading back home. Aerion is still wounded as all hell, and you can even see Daron holding a sack of wine for the road. We end on Prince Mikar furious that Egg is nowhere to be found. There are so many ways this show circles back to the beginning, and it's so refreshing to see that great storytelling is back in Westeros. What did you think of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to our channel, Movies and Series Reset. Until next time, remember, the night is dark and full of terrors, but the stories, they're just getting started.